Hello all you shit weasels. I'm trying out a new format today, so bugger it all, let's get to it.
Are you able to understand the irony of responding to the perceived political correctness of the left with exasperated reactionary hypersensitivity of your own?
You seem to be confusing the YouTube pantomime with hypersensitivity. The thing is, people don't just make videos to get their views out there, they do it to entertain. So yeah, their reactions are going to be exaggerated. Here's the thing. Imagine someone tells a sexist joke at work. Someone gasps and yells, "That's so offensive! You clearly hate women! You should be fired!" Someone like me would probably say, "Hey now, that's really stupid. Why would you go after someone's job for telling a silly joke?" And then here you come with, "Haha, look at how hypersensitive this guy is. We only want to take away this guy's livelihood because he told a knock-knock joke, and this shitlord over here is pissing his pants."
What is it with you people and skulls?
I don't know. What is it with you people in One Direction gift bags?
How do you define right-wing? Anti-SJWs often have an aversion to being labelled as right-wing, yet they regularly defend the right and bash the left. Therefore, why is being labelled right-wing a bad thing to you?
If someone has an aversion to being labelled right-wing, it's generally because they're not right-wing. I'm not right-wing, but I don't soil myself and cry if someone calls me as such. If anything, it's people like you who have put such a negative label on it, since you like to put the right-wing stamp on just about anything 3 inches right of fucking Trudeau.
Rather than telling people you disagree with to drink bleach, wouldn't it be more productive for you to have an actual conversation about the issues you feel matter? Or is it just easier to do the bleach thing?
I'm not sure about asking other people to drink bleach, but it is easier to drink bleach than to discuss serious issues with the social justice/feminist crowd. In fact, I'm fairly certain that was what the joke was, so you may have failed on your opening sentence. Nice one.
You claim to be proponents of rational, logical, evidence-based argumentation. That's great. That's entirely laudable. But when I look at your online activity, when I look at, I don't know, for example, your Twitter feed, that's often not what I see. How do you reconcile this claim to be evidence-based and rational and logical against stuff like, "Oh, I was just trolling you," "Oh, I was just shitposting," or TLDR?
Welcome to the internet, my friend. That sort of stuff happens all the time. People troll and shitpost and leave nasty comments, and some of those people might be fans of people you disagree with. It's the Wild West, so either carry a 6-shooter or don a steel chest plate. It will get ugly. And if you're trying to have a debate on Twitter, don't bother. Twitter is for memes, sound bites, and bots that look like sexy ladies.
No, seriously? What is it with you people and skulls?
I don't know. What is it with you people and living in a cluttered warehouse?
Are you aware that the ridiculous buzzwords you helped to popularize, like SJW and cuck and regressive, have all lost whatever meaning they once had and only serve now as catch-all insults and pejoratives to derail any meaningful conversation?
Yes, it's almost like how the words racist and misogynist and other terms have lost all meaning and are now just catch-all insults and pejorative terms to derail any meaningful conversation. Oh, tu quoque, tu quoque. Yes, we're all guilty of name-calling. Now how about doing something about it instead of complaining about being called a cuck? And put some clothes on. For fuck's sakes.
For the last time, what is it with you people and committing actual literal felonies? Like, you might want to work on that?
I don't know, what is it with you guys and pedophilia? Oh, I'm sorry, does Sarah Nyberg not represent you? I was certain she did. You tit.
In videos and in the comment sections, anti-feminists often take up the most extreme or the weakest feminist position they can find, or they just straight up misrepresent what the feminist position is. Instead, why not take up the strongest, most robust feminist argument you can find and really challenge yourself?
Well, most feminist arguments tend to be about as sturdy as a polio victim, but if you were willing to engage in one-on-one discussions with the likes of Sargon, Undoomed, Chris Ray Gun, Dave Rubin and all those other Nazis, then I'm sure they'd be willing to listen. I've heard every feminist argument under the sun. Rape culture, toxic masculinity, the wage gap, etc. All of which have been proven time and time again to be nonsense. And you're telling me those are the weakest arguments? Well, where are the good ones then? Or should I just educate myself?
I am deeply concerned with male addiction rates, suicide rates, and abuse rates, because I have worked with these issues in the quote-unquote real world. Would you be willing as anti-feminists to put aside your differences with feminists for the greater good of addressing these issues, especially as the kind of solutions needed are not necessarily gendered? And if so, I would actually like you to let me know, because I'm not fucking around or presenting any gotchas here. I actually really think that we could get something done if we work together. So, yeah.
You know what? Maybe you could. Maybe you could. But the fact is that a good portion of the feminist community is unwilling to work with egalitarians and, God forbid, men's rights activists on anything. So good for you, Chrisiosity. But as far as I can tell, you're the last of a dying breed.
What is third wave feminism? Because I've often heard you folks insist that you have no objection to feminism in general. It's specifically third wave feminism that you have a quarrel with. So what is third wave feminism specifically? And what specifically about third wave feminism do you have such a problem with?
I don't really differentiate, but you would probably know what our problems with any kind of feminism are if you kindly unblocked me and everyone who would like to debate you, Steve.
Why is it that this feminist represents all feminists, but this men's rights activist doesn't represent all men's rights activists?
Whoa, wait, sexism all of a sudden? Ladies and men are different? So we're supposed to punch men and not hit ladies and open doors for men but not ladies? Fuck you, get out of my face, you tiny piece of shit.
Firstly, Trigglypuff doesn't represent all feminists. She represents herself. However, if she's anything, then she's a mascot for the sort of thing we're fighting against. Grotesquely lazy, unreasonable, entitled people who have never been told no. People who would rather retreat into a safe space and drag others along with them than risk hearing a new idea that might not conform to how they already view the world. As for that guy in the restaurant, is he an MRA? So, I don't know. But besides, if you're so confused about this, then you can ask your little blonde friend over here. He seems fairly set on the idea that one person in a group represents everyone in that group. Did you guys even talk to each other before you did this?
Why am I continually asked to answer for the views of feminists if I agree with feminism's overall aims, but don't agree much with those particular feminists? Does that mean that I can ask you to answer for anybody who labels themselves similarly to you, even if you don't agree much?
You can only speak for yourself, which is why I wonder what the point of labelling yourself is if you don't wish to act as damage control for the Trigglypuffs of the world. As Brian said,
"You're all individuals!" Yes, we're all individuals!
If SDUs are bad because they spend too much time whining and don't talk about real problems, then why aren't you talking about those problems instead of just whining about the other people over and over and over for literally years? I mean, in the scale of priorities, that's like even lower, right? You know, you've got the real problems, you've got the things that feminists worry about, and then you've got you going, oh, how dare they? Just, how dare they have different priorities from me? Why can't they do what I do? Whine about whining forever for a living. That's healthy.
Firstly, why is racism a feminist issue? I swear you lot absorb everything like the fucking Blob. Where's Steve McQueen when you need him? Secondly, you act like we don't think sexual assault is a problem. We just don't think that people who have claimed to be raped should be immediately believed by a bunch of slack-jawed, virtue-signalling, mop-headed puppets, despite the evidence or lack thereof for fear of hurting their feelings. As for the whining about whining, isn't that literally what you've been doing right now? Good God, man, listen to yourself!
Why don't you seem as concerned with actual feminist theory in academia as you are with wrecking people for views?
Well, holy shit. YouTubers are concerned with getting views? Insanity. But seriously, given that Sargon of Akkad started a petition to get social justice courses suspended pending an investigation into the facts being taught and their methods used, I'd say we're pretty concerned with feminist academia. But then I can't speak for everyone else because I have not yet been assimilated into the anti-SJW Borg that you all seem to be so concerned about.
Since so many of you profess to be admirers of second-wave feminism as opposed to third-wave feminism, I thought it would be interesting to ask which second-wave feminists in particular do you appreciate? Which books written by second-wave feminists have you read and found interesting? Which second-wave feminist activists have you specifically admired as you formed the opinion that you like second-wave feminism but you have no use for third-wave feminism? I'm just curious.
Sorry, Steve. I can't hear you. I think there's something blocking us. Is there anything you could do about that? Steve?
You do understand that reading the title of a book or an article or watching the first 15 seconds of a video is not going to give you a deep, nuanced understanding of what that book or article or video is about, right? That being said, how can you expect to understand or critique feminist sources if you don't even attempt to understand what they're trying to say?
What makes you think we haven't read or listened to these arguments? What makes you think we don't understand them? And what makes you not want to put on some blasted clothes?
Why is trying and failing to debunk a study into sexual assault the #1 priority for a rational thinker now? Does it maybe say something about your priorities? Does it maybe? Nah, it's fine, it's the feminazis, we have to stop them. They're taking away our video games. Look, Anita, I'm sorry, but I can't actually destroy video games. That doesn't make any sense.
If that study is flawed, then yeah. It's one's top priority as a skeptic and rational thinker to debunk it. Especially since the way certain people react to it has a chance of affecting people's lives in a negative way. Oh, hold on a sec. Hello? Yeah, I'm just doing the video now. Yeah, H guy, baller, something, I don't know. Oh, kind of like a deformed Owen Wilson. I don't know. Seems to be some kind of shed. I think it's his house. Okay. Yeah, you should be able to see the One Direction bag on his windowsill. I don't know either, man. I don't. Okay. Take the shot when you're ready. See you later. Now where were we?
One of the major arguments that I see in many of your videos is that it is possible to separate criticism of the religion of Islam from the actual Muslim people. And yet, this line seems to be crossed very often. I see things like raghead or camel fucker or other things like that in your comment sections. I see people taking very serious shots at Muslims in videos and hangouts, and they don't get called out. At least not that I can see. So my question is this: why should a person of conscience who is concerned about the Muslim people and their community not being harmed or mistreated, why should they believe that you're actually only attempting to look at the ideas and talk about the ideas if you ignore bigotry that's occurring right in front of you? And in that light, would you be willing to break bread and salt with moderate Muslim people on your videos, have hangouts, invite them to your channels, just in order to build some bridges there and to learn more about what they think and how they feel and what their experience has been, so that information and knowledge can be furthered?
I seriously do not understand the obsession you people have with what's being said in the comments section. Guess what? Arseholes exist. They will always exist. Just because someone doesn't bother chastising racist idiots in their comments section does not mean they are passively approving of them. And I wouldn't delete them either because I value freedom of speech, even for cunts. And whilst I'm sure everyone you are questioning would be glad to have discussions with moderate Muslims, I want to know why you guys are so set on defending what is essentially a socially conservative ideology.
Do you deny that systemic racism against black people is like a thing in general? If so, What? Okay, just step up. Just cover your ears for a second and let the smart people talk.
Ha 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 ha! Fuck you. If you're gonna act like you're superior to me, I refuse to answer your question.
If you've ever discussed or done a video about black-on-black crime, when are you going to do a video about white-on-white crime and what we, as white people, can do to solve the problems in our community?
There's a reason why people make such a big thing about black-on-black crime. It's because BLM claims to be concerned about black people, and yet it doesn't seem concerned about dealing with the number one thing that's killing black people. Not cops, and certainly not global warming, but other black people. Now obviously there have been cases where innocent people have been shot by the cops, and I think that police violence and gun violence in the US is a problem that needs to be discussed. But if BLM was more concerned about what's actually hurting black people rather than racializing a non-racial issue and starting riots over criminals, then I would be on their side. As of now, however, I'm sorry, but all lives matter. And that includes black people, in case you didn't realise.
Why is a literal teenager's different definition of racism from you so horrifying that you all have to go, No! No, we have to stop him! We've got to debunk him now! Ah!
First of all, there is one definition of racism, so why would I not call that out? Secondly, Milo called all white people racist, all men misogynistic, and all cisgender people transphobic. Why would one not take issue with that? I'm a man, I'm white, I'm straight, and I'm cis. And I am none of the things he claimed. What, am I supposed to not call him out because he's a fucking teenager? How very ageist of you. Tell you what, why don't you go around to high schools and tell all the teachers there how terrible they are for chastising a teenage boy for pissing in their desk drawer during lunchtime. I'm sure they'd appreciate your input. Yeah, we'll just let Milo say all these things without opposition. That's a great way for people to learn. Oh, just a second. Hello? Yeah, he's still there. What? You missed? The man's hair probably glows in the dark and you missed? What the fuck?
Wherever did you get the idea that racism was a self-applied identity? And if the only true racists are the racists who self-identify as racists, how can we ever expect to make any social progress to reduce racism? Or did I just answer my own question?
I've got thermal drill, Steve. I think I can pierce through. Don't worry, bud. I'll answer your question as soon as I can get past.
You often say that you are for equality of opportunity, but if people of color, for instance, have to overcome barriers whites do not, such as discrimination and unequal treatment as are well documented in various studies, then how can the current situation be thought of as equal opportunity in any real way? And why do you consider it racist to discuss these issues?
I don't consider it racist. If people are being discriminated against, then that's a serious issue. However, you and your ilk have failed to prove that it is occurring in first world countries nowadays. At least on a systemic rather than individual level.
Do you understand basic English syntax? Like, you know, if I say this cat is pretty, I don't mean that all other cats aren't pretty. Like, do you really not get why saying all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter is not only racially insensitive, but just patently ridiculous?
How the fuck is saying all lives matter racially insensitive? You do know that all includes black people, right? Look, I have no problem with special interest groups. If BLM are interested in helping black people, then great. But they're not doing that. They're lying down on airport runways and causing riots. How the fuck does that help anyone?
Isn't it offensive to men to assume that a man could only ever want equality for women, and therefore be comfortable with feminism as a whole in order to get laid, and that reduces us to beasts? If that was the case, wouldn't I attempt to get laid from my views instead of not ever trying that?
I think that question was a bit butchered, but by all means, go get laid. Maybe it'll loosen you up a bit. Seriously, you look really fucking miserable, man. Feminism. Not even once.
If you say you're an egalitarian, will you call out the man-hating slurs that you see coming from people within your community? People who use terms like cuck, beta male, faggot, or mangina? All of these things basically distill men down into thinking that the most important thing about them is to be having sex with a woman. That's rather offensive. So what are you doing to stop this kind of behavior in your community?
I care little about what trolls and 14-year-olds are saying. How about you listen to the arguments that are being laid down instead of whining about standard internet shitposting?
What is the number of followers, the number of likes, the number of dislikes, the number of retweets, the number of subscribers, any of those numbers, any of those metrics, what have they got to do with the argument? Deepak Chopra, for example, a man who trots out an endless stream of pseudoscientific quantum woo bollocks, has nearly 3 million followers. So what? Those people follow him because he tells them what they want to hear. Why even mention the number of followers you have?
I agree. First thing I've agreed with in this video. It's not exactly a massive problem though, is it? I mean, the only time I've ever encountered this personally is when it was used against me by an SJW on Twitter. So, yeah. This was productive.
Why is it that you go on and fucking on about safe spaces and trigger warnings and delicate little flowers, but continue to hide behind your cartoon avatars and your childish pseudonyms, and whenever anyone calls you out on your sexist, racist, homophobic, bigoted rhetoric, you become the argument of your own scorn and are hashtag triggered, as they say?
The reason that many of these people don't show their faces and instead use cartoon avatars and such are because people like you like to find out who they are, find out their names, addresses and places of work and try to get them fired. Just check out the whole Thunderfoot and Laughing Witch debacle for an example. Or if you want something closer to home, Phil Moriarty in this very video, who I was sad to find out was doxed himself recently. This is why people use pseudonyms and avatars. Also, did you not realise that there are 2 people in this very video that hide, as you put it, behind cartoon avatars? Seriously, did you guys talk to one another before this? And as for the second part of your question, taking issue with being called racist or homophobic, etc., especially when you aren't, is a little different from getting emotional because you had to listen to another person's point of view. Feelings are not comparable to reputations.
Are you willing to publicly acknowledge and admonish the massive amount of hatred, bullying, harassment, and intimidation that a lot of your fans infringe upon people? And I don't mean these tiny disclaimers that you put under the description fold or flash for 2 seconds at the beginning of the video that you know nobody reads. I mean a public and ongoing anti-bullying stance. Or do you kind of like watching your fans go around harassing people and calling them slurs and telling them to kill themselves? You kind of like it, don't you? I mean, if that's your thing, and I guess that's just what you're into, just makes you a dick.
I think you meant inflict, not infringe. I guess that's what happens when you let the smart people talk. As a fan of many of the people this is referring to, I happen to know that people have minds of their own. Even if all these YouTubers got together and made a video condemning people who leave slurs and insults on their opponents' videos, you would still complain because it would still happen. Because
You're all individuals!
And besides, what do you consider bullying? Insults and slurs or actual criticism? Because both can be pretty triggering for you guys in my experience.
Why do you find it so hard to believe that feminists are being harassed online?
We don't find it hard to believe, we just don't care because it's something that happens to everyone. This is the internet. Everyone gets called a fag, a homo, a cunt, a fairy, a bitch, a Jew, a nigger, a racist, etc, etc, etc. That will always happen. So we just ignore it or we block them. Or if you're into Sarkeesian, you do a TED talk about it and use it to gain sympathy and money. It's the same with threats. If you feel you are being threatened, then go to the cops. Other than that, I can't help you.
Do you understand the key importance of reproducibility and repeatability in scientific research? That's simply going to Google Scholar, doing a 30-second search for keywords and pulling out the first paper you find that backs up your stance is not a particularly credible way to do research. That you have to have a much broader overview to read the material, to follow the citations through, to look at the broad brush approach to a particular problem. You do realise that you're as much of a social justice warrior as those you critique. It's just that you espouse a different form of social justice, a rather less considerate, rather less forgiving, rather less kind form of social justice.
SJWs? Kind and forgiving? Tell that to Stephen Fry. But if I were to grant what you're saying, then I would say the form of social justice we are espousing is the one that ensures that nobody's rights are infringed upon. Ours is also the practical one, in my opinion at least. I'm for freedom of speech, I'm against censorship, even for racists, and against racism. I want equality of opportunity, and I'm against discrimination. I do, however, believe ultimately we are responsible for ourselves, and that just because someone says they're being discriminated against does not mean that they necessarily are, because we are all human and all humans lie. Our form of social justice is the one that understands human nature.
If you identify as an egalitarian, then I'm interested in your take on the usefulness of the concept of the original position as laid out by John Rawls in his theory of justice.
Okay.
As a supporter, as a proponent of freedom of speech, why do you want to quash academic freedom? If you're not familiar with the concept of academic freedom, it's worth, in the UK at least, looking up the 1988 Education Reform Act and seeing what that says about the rights of academics to put across unpopular opinions.
I have no problem with unpopular opinions. What I do have a problem with is misinformation, especially when it's being perpetuated in places where young people go to learn about the world. Just because you have academic freedom does not mean I have to sit back and shrug when you spout bullshit to students.
Why are you so obsessed with Anita Sarkeesian?
No one's obsessed with her, except maybe Thunderfoot. But what we do think is that she's a con artist and almost entirely incapable of being right about anything.
Do you really think you can spend your entire life in a perpetual...
Yes, very clever, Tom. You took Sargon's question and flipped it around on us. You're a genius. Anyways, better late than never. I hope to hear from you guys soon. I have to go and commit some actual literal felonies. So, if you'll excuse me... Hey there, man. Yeah, look, I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't have... No, don't cry. You made a mistake, that's fine. Just... Look, come back here and we'll... Hey? Oh, you got another job. Well, that's good. January 20th? What's that all about? Oh. Well, good luck. Ugh, fuck.